Hey, good afternoon, everyone. We're ready to get started with the webinar. I'm Andrew Gavin, Deputy Executive Director for the Commission, and we are hosting this webinar today to walk you through the details of our new grandfathering water use registration program. At this time, I'll ask the other staff members present who will be handling portions of the webinar to introduce themselves as well.
Hi, I'm Paula Balleron. I'm the Manager of the Policy Implementation and Outreach at the Commission.
And I'm Rochelle Eby. I'm a Compliance Specialist in our Compliance Group at the Commission.
So for the webinar format today, in addition to the slides you'll be viewing, we'll have a dialog box open and available to submit your comments and questions. And if you look on the right side of your computer screen, you'll see a chat box. If you select under the chat box selection Gwen Rowland, that will enable you to submit questions or comments that we'll be able to see and compile here at our office and address towards the end of the webinar when we open it up for question and answers. So overall, we hope this webinar provides a better understanding of our new registration program, but we also hope to learn from the questions that you submit about how we can improve our communications related to this new program. At the end, we have set aside some time to respond to the questions, and depending on the volume of the questions, we'll either address them individually or we'll organize the responses by themes if we have a lot of questions on a particular topic. Either way, we won't identify the person who submitted the questions. We'll keep that. So, for the webinar, it's intended, as mentioned, to walk you through the basics of the registration program, help you to determine whether or not registration applies to you, and if it does, we have outlined the basic steps in the process. We conducted some extensive outreach as part of the development and launch of this program, so we know that some have received information, have to determine where they fit with those requirements, but we also hope word will continue to spread to those that need to know and that we may not have reached. So for some of you that may be unfamiliar with the Susquehanna River Basin and the Commission, we have some background here up front. The basin itself stretches from New York to Maryland, with the Susquehanna River entering the Chesapeake Bay in Maryland. And with that, it supplies approximately half of the flow to the Chesapeake Bay. The basin is about 27,000 square miles, which we commonly say is roughly the size of South Carolina. And for a river basin in the mid-Atlantic northeast region of the U.S. with a population of 4.2 million, we don't have as large a population as our neighboring basins in the Delaware and Allegheny, but the basin does serve as an important source of drinking water for diversions to the Philadelphia and Baltimore areas. As for the Commission itself, it was created by the Susquehanna River Basin Compact, which was signed into law in 1970, so we commonly refer to ourselves as a Federal Interstate Compact Commission. And it was created by an act of Congress and the 3 state legislatures of New York, PA, and Maryland. Each member has a representative, which in our case is the commander for the North Atlantic Division of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the heads of each state's environmental management agency, which for New York, as pictured, is the Department of Environmental Conservation. For Pennsylvania, the Department of Environmental Protection, and for Maryland, the Maryland Department of Environment. So Commission staff meet regularly with our commissioners and their supporting staff to assist them in rendering decisions on all important matters before the Commission, which included getting to where we are today with the development and implementation of initiatives like the registration program we're presenting on today. So this slide presents a quick synopsis of the Commission's mission in the first bullet, which essentially provides for the comprehensive management of a water body that spans multiple jurisdictions. And as you can see in bullet 2, our primary water resource authorities exist to manage a diversity of uses across the basin and avoid conflicts. And I think it's equally important to highlight the non-regulatory role of the Commission in providing for serving its citizens of the basin as well, which includes planning activities to reduce threats and increase preparedness for floods and droughts, to monitor water quality and support efforts to improve and restore quality where pollution exists, and to assist the states with efforts to better protect drinking water sources, just to name a few of the other activities. So as mentioned, water uses in the basin are diverse, as pictured in this slide, and although there is heavy dependence on resource for power supply, drinking water, manufacturing, irrigation, and such, there are also other important needs and uses related to fishing and other forms of recreation. and as well for maintaining adequate flows in our rivers and streams and ultimately maintaining adequate flows to the Chesapeake Bay. So for this registration program, as you'll see in the following slides, it will help us fill a gap in water use data to better manage overall use in the basin, which, as you can see, can get very complex quickly considering the host of users, especially in portions of the basin where heavy utilization of the resource exists in fairly close proximity. I'll now turn it over to Paula Balleron, who will go into some of the details of the program.
Thanks, Andy. Because you've signed on to the webinar, you know that the Commission is launching a new program requiring registration of certain older water withdrawals and consumptive uses in the basin. The Commission's regulations provide that water withdrawals and uses that are in excess of the regulatory thresholds do not require a Commission docket or approval under Section 806.4 if those activities and sources predated the applicable regulations, provided there's no environmental harm. This exemption from review and approval is commonly referred to as grandfathering. The regulation for the required registration goes into effect and registration will begin on January 1st, 2018. It's important to note that the registration process preserves the exemption from project review and approval for eligible grandfathered withdrawals and consumptive uses, provided the facility registers by December 31, 2019. So what do we really mean by grandfathering? As I mentioned, grandfathering is a use or a source that was initiated prior to the effective date of the applicable regulation. So for consumptive users, that date is January 23rd, 1971. For groundwater withdrawals, the effective date of the regulation is July 13, 1978. For surface water withdrawals, the effective date is November 11, 1995. And there's also, if you have a combination of groundwater and surface water sources, the effective date for the combination is January 1st, 2007. Generally, a facility will have to be currently operating above the applicable threshold volumes in order to register. So the thresholds are 20,000 gallons per day for consumptive uses and 100,000 gallons per day for withdrawals. And these are calculated as a maximum consecutive 30-day average. The primary goals of registration is to better understand the wide variety of diverse water uses, as Andy indicated. Registration will also establish a definitive quantity of water that provides certainty on how a grandfathered facility may continue to operate and retain its existing exempt status. Registration will also offer security to facilities, knowing that the Commission will strive to protect those grandfathered water sources from future impacts and assist in resolving any conflicts that may arise with neighboring users. In the end, the Commission anticipates that registration will improve water management for all users in the basin. In terms of program background, if you've looked at some of the materials of the FAQ or the fact sheet that we mailed to folks, the Commission conducted a recent study called the Cumulative Water Use and Availability Study, which compiled all of the available state data within the basin to characterize water use and availability. The study highlighted that there are data gaps present in some areas of high water use. In addition, the Commission estimated that there are possibly more than 700 exempt facilities with an estimated water use of nearly 1 billion gallons per day. If accurate, that volume of water use is roughly equal to the total amount currently accounted for and managed by the Commission across the entire basin. So recognizing this data gap, after a 2-year discussion process with our commissioners, the development of draft regulations, a 120-day comment period, several webinars, individual and group meetings with legislators, trade groups, and municipal authority groups, the Commission approved the development of this registration program that would close the knowledge gap regarding exempt water uses to ensure the Commission's ability to effectively manage the water resources of the basin. The registration program provides for collecting uniform baseline data for exempt facilities, essentially knowing where the grandfathered facilities are, knowing how much water they're withdrawing or consumptively using, and establishing that exempt quantity of withdrawal and usage and ongoing reporting. Rochelle will continue with some specifics of the registration program.
So the next few slides will walk through the registration form so you can see what information will be required from your facility. The form's still being finalized. It could slightly change, but the photo should provide an idea of the format and questions that you'll see throughout the registration. The registration itself is split into 4 sections. You'll provide information on facility contacts and the facility location, what water sources you're using, and consumptive uses. Just an important note that we know a few facilities have existing Commission approvals for some aspects of their facility, or we're going to have some fields pre-populated or complete in the registration for you. We'll send additional information prior to the registration beginning in January. So the first section of the registration form requests information regarding the facility location and contact information for facility staff. This section must be fully completed before the other sections open. And just a general note, there are blue help icons throughout the registration. You can see the red arrow pointing to the icon on the screen. When you click on that help icon, you'll see a little pop-up comes up, and it provides a more detailed description of information that we're requesting if you need clarification. The second section of the registration form will request information about your facility operations and other agency permits and reporting. You'll provide a general description of the facility, what sources you're using, what your water is used for, when your operations began. If you had any dates of any changes in ownership since 2007. If you have withdrawal or discharge permits with other state agencies, you'll enter information regarding your permit numbers, what agency the permit is for, and any approval quantities. Similarly, if you report data for withdrawals or discharges to any state agency, you can provide information on who you report to and under what ID number or name. Another general note, throughout the registration form, you'll see 2 ways to provide information. If you look on the screen, there's 2 red arrows. You can see that you can type directly into a text box, or you can upload a file. You don't have to do both, just whichever is more preferable and easier for you to provide information. The third section of the registration will request information on water withdrawals and sources at your facility. You'll enter information for all sources and a description of how you quantify each withdrawal. This could be using flow meters, calculations, or estimates. Then you'll provide withdrawal data for each source from the previous 5 years. You can provide data older than 5 years if withdrawal quantities were previously higher, or if it's helpful to make a determination for your grandfathering quantity. Lastly, there's a supporting data area down at the bottom of the form where you can upload documents or data to support the withdrawal information you're providing in the registration form. Acceptable items can include recorded withdrawal data in an Excel format or spreadsheet. You can provide copies of data or forms that are periodically submitted to other state agencies, or you can provide copies of previous grandfathering determinations from the Commission. And then just another important note, if quantity data is not available, you can provide any information which a determination of quantity could be made, such as estimates or equipment specifications. regulations. And the last section of registration is for consumptive water uses at the facility. Just to note that the previous 3 sections are required. Consumptive use section is only if it's applicable to your facility. Just a general overview, since some of you aren't familiar with what consumptive use is. It's a process which water is used and not returned to the basin undiminished in quantity. So some common consumptive uses could be irrigation of water or wastewater, loss from cooling or heating equipment, incorporation into products including bottling beverages or water, evaporation, cooling towers, or diversion of water or treated wastewater to another river basin. If you're not sure if something is a consumptive use or how to quantify or estimate any consumptive uses, please contact us for help. So the final section is consumptive use. This is sort of a general idea of what the form will look like. You'll enter information for all consumptive uses at the facility and the date each type of consumptive use began. You'll describe how the facility quantifies consumptive use, including information on flow meters or any calculations or estimates. Commonly, consumptive use is determined by the difference between inflow to the facility and effluent from the facility. Or you can determine consumptive use from each individual process or use type. Similarly to the withdrawal section, you'll provide consumptive use data from the previous 5 years, and you can also provide older data if consumptive uses were historically higher than they are currently or you don't have current data. You'll upload data to support the 30-day average consumptive use quantity indicated and any other information that may be helpful in making a grandfathering determination. This may include recorded withdrawal data or copies of previous grandfathering determinations from the Commission. And again, if quantity data is not available, just upload any information that you have which could be helpful in making a grandfathering determination. And again, if you're not sure if something is a consumptive use or how to quantify, just contact us for help. So just to clarify what data to provide for the supporting data sections, again, for withdrawals and consumptive uses, you'll be providing withdrawal data for each individual source and total consumptive use for the entire facility. Data would preferably be based on flow meters, since this is the most accurate accounting methodology, but if metering data is unavailable, you can include production records, equipment specifications, or scientific calculations. If data provided in the registration form is not based on flow meters, please include sufficient details and a description of how the data was determined. Once the registration form is submitted and completed, the facility will receive an email explaining the registration form was submitted. At this point, nothing further is required of the facility until you're contacted by Commission staff. Commission staff will then complete an administrative review for completeness, followed by a technical review. We are experiencing a large influx of registrations, and it may take a while till we begin reviewing your facility's registration. So just keep in mind you don't need to do anything until you're contacted by Commission staff. And we will contact you once review of the registration begins just to confirm details and ask any questions. The Executive Director will determine the grandfather quantity for each withdrawal source and total consumptive use of the facility. The determination will be made based on reliability and accuracy of data, reasonable usage, and other relevant factors. And then just 2 other notes that the determination is appealable, and the determination may require a metering and monitoring plan to ensure that your ongoing data reporting is accurate and reliable.
All right, this is Andrew Gavin again. Just in regards to registration fees, to incentivize early registration as well as to provide the opportunity to avoid any fee whatsoever. The Commission does have for the first 6 months of the program, so starting on January 1, 2018 through June 30th, 2018, there will be no registration fee assessed for those that come in to register and enter their information. As you can see on your screen, beyond that, starting July 1 through December of 2018, there will be a registration fee of $500, and then for the final year of registration, during 2019, the registration fee goes up to $1,000. This slide just covers the schedule, so for those of you that track commission activities, and for those of you that don't, we started this process a little over a year and a half ago with the public comment period, in which we had 120 days roughly from September through January into 2017, and several public hearings, each in the state of Maryland, Pennsylvania, and New York to collect information on the proposed rulemaking. Our commissioners adopted that rulemaking, and the regulation was published in June 2017. And so, now we're looking at registration to begin on January 1, 2018, as indicated on our website and other informational materials. You'll see we're also offering a second webinar on December 13th, where we will again have question and answer session as part of that webinar. So, if you have questions that are prompted by this presentation and you didn't have the opportunity to ask the question, there will be another opportunity to do that on December 13th. But really, at any time, contact information on our website. We'll direct you to staff that can help you with any questions you may have on our registration program. And on our website, we have information. We have fact sheet, frequently asked questions document, and we'll probably be adding to that frequently asked question document as we encounter more questions from all of you and others on specifics of the program where we can be more clear as to how to go about registering. And then the last note, you will note on the information on our website and fact sheets, and if you received a letter, that there is an ongoing reporting requirement as part of the registration program, and that is either reporting that would come in here to the commission, or in the case if you're reporting on an annual basis your data to the state. We are coordinating with the state where we'll be looking to share registration data for those that are registered with the state. Any reporting on that won't occur prior to January 2019. So really, we approached the end of our presentation. Just to reiterate, in summary, the program's intended to better understand water uses in the basin, recognizing the gap of information that exists in water use throughout the basin, as Paula detailed, and really, within that landscape of water use, known users, that we have an idea of the exempt and grandfathered operations in the basin and can better account for their operations and protect their use. So, and then lastly, just to conclude, as mentioned by Rochelle a number of times, commission staff are here to help. We recognize this is a new program, and some people, this may be your first interaction with the commission. We certainly, are creating the registration portal to be as user-friendly as possible, but we recognize that, there will always be questions that arise with any new process. So, we'd like to strongly encourage, don't hesitate to reach out with questions, and we know since the mailing received by many that people have been contacting us, and we've been able to work through some questions and allay some concerns about the program since that time as well. So with that, I'll pause, and we will prepare here in about 30 seconds to respond to some of the questions that have been rolling in on the chat box.
We received a question about what kind of data, what might data look like if a facility is submitting older data, and they suggested a 6-month period or several 30-day periods. Really, there is some discretion, and we'd encourage the facility to submit what data they can. What we're looking for really to establish a grandfathered quantity would be daily data for a peak consecutive 30-day period. So if you have older data that shows that, that would be the minimum submittal for data. We received another question about registration fees. Is the registration fee per source or per facility? The fee is actually per facility.
Okay. We had another question, just a quick question. Will the webinar be available by the end of the week? And we do plan to post the webinar and the recorded audio on our website by Monday of next week.
It looks like we're getting another question about seeing examples of data fields that need to be completed to make it easier to assemble data for completing the registration form. If you actually go back through, so when the webinar is posted online, if you go back through, you'll see about 95% of the fields that are posted that we went through in the required information section.
I had a quick question about the registration fee and how it will be calculated for consumptive use. The registration fee itself, those are flat fees, so that's going to be $0 for registration fee for the first 6 months, $500 for the second 6 months, and then $1,000 thereafter. So there isn't going to be any fee calculated based on quantity of water for registration.
We have a question here about can a sample form, application form, be provided, and we'll have a PDF available on our website by December 15. Right now the form is still in development, but it's hitting the final stages, so we're close, and so by mid-December you'll have something you can look at.
So we got a question asking about somebody that already has a docket and they're reporting to the commission, but the docket has a grandfathered quantity stated in the docket. They're asking if they need to supply the 5 years of data. So if you have a previous determination, grandfathering determination by the commission, and it's in the docket, you do still have to register, but if you want the quantity stated in the docket as to remain your grandfathered quantity, then you don't. You would just indicate that in the forms that you want that to remain the same. Now, if you acquire more data that determines your grandfathering determination is maybe higher than you previously thought and that we indicated, then you can provide additional data to change that quantity. But if you want it to be the same quantity, you do still have to register. But if you're not changing the quantity that was previously determined, you do not need to supply 5 years of data. There's also a question about somebody's been reporting usage to the commission and asking if they need to resend all of this data. So you would still need to register if it's a grandfathered source. But if we have the data and your grandfather quantity is not changing, you don't need to resend 5 years worth of data.
Yeah, this goes back to the case where for those projects that, have the commission has touched in some way with respect to a docket or approval, we're going to look at your projects and we're going to pre-populate as much information as possible, and we'll be looking to reach out specifically to those projects so that it, makes the registration process even easier, because we recognize some of you may have one foot in the door where you have some of your grandfathered sources have already, been assigned a limit and in some cases are even reporting. So we certainly don't want to overcomplicate the process for those of you that already have some level of grandfathering source recognized by the commission. Again, there's a couple questions about data submission and what if we don't have 5 years of data and other questions related to that. If you recall, when Rochelle was covering that section, we're really going to work with, registrants that, if you have spotty data, but then you have other information on equipment specs of withdrawal pumps, anything of that sort, we're we're really going to work with the registrant to try and determine what's the best information upon which a grandfathered quantity determination could be made. And so in those cases, we'd certainly encourage the project to reach out because we recognize there can be some real complexity to projects that are best, dealt with over the phone. And we'll assist you moving through the registration process. There was a question, I think there was more than one, that asked what happens if you don't register any of your water sources. So as Paula mentioned, this works just as much to the benefit of the grandfathered project. If you register your source within the 2-year period, it preserves the exemption with the commission. So outside of that timeline, though, that there's a risk that exemption would be lost if it wasn't registered. So it is important, if you have sources that exceed the threshold that have been, considered grandfathered or exempt, based on the information we have available on the website, that it would be, you would want to register during that 2-year window.
We have a question about the thresholds and what's exempt and what should be registered. It would be our recommendation that if you cross either a threshold, the 20,000 consumptive use or the 100,000 withdrawal, that you register all of your sources as the facility, because that would protect any grandfathered exemptions that you have. We have a question about reporting on data outside of the Susquehanna River Basin, and that's correct. That this regulation only applies to sources and facilities within the basin.
And just to add to that, it's probably important to note on the boundaries of the Susquehanna River Basin. This was this was quite an extensive mailing, so to the extent that there's possibly some inaccurate locational information, that that should probably be the first thing a project, that if you think you're close to the border of the watershed divide between the Susquehanna and neighboring basins, we have maps available on our website, and we can assist you too. If there's any question on whether you're in or whether you're out of the basin, we can help with those questions. Yeah, there was a question regarding how does registering preserve the grandfather determination. This is a case where the whole intent of this program is that we figure there's a lot of grandfathered use occurring in a basin that we don't have, determination made. So, roughly what we think, as stated earlier in the presentation, roughly half of the water, or roughly double the amount of water we have approved is, or just as much water that's been approved by the commission, we are estimating is, exempt from regulation. So to that extent, we anticipate a lot of projects out there not having a known quantity of water within which they can operate that would be historically exempt. So we're looking to identify that use, be able to assign numbers to it so that we can protect that use and manage water use surrounding those facilities as well, recognizing, we're looking to avoid water use conflicts and such, as we mentioned earlier in the presentation.
Lisa, let me just add that for projects that may have participated in the Compliance Incentive Program in the early 2000s, there may have been a grandfathered determination about a source, for instance, where a quantity was never established. And also the locational information from that time period probably wasn't very accurate. So as I mentioned, what we're trying to do is create a universal, a uniform baseline of data for all of the uses that equal or exceed the threshold quantities in the basin, whether or not they've been approved by docket or whether they're currently exempt. So you can, when you register, you can accept a previous determination as to quantity. That's possible to do, and it will make registration simpler for you.
Yeah, there's a couple questions on changes in ownership, and so when you get to the point of where we launched the registration form, the question's going to, and I think we indicated in an earlier slide, we're really interested in changes in ownership from 2007 and on. And the form itself is really just, the question was clarify how a change in ownership affects the grandfathering approval. So really we're just looking for the registrant to detail what's gone on ownership-wise since that 2007 date, and staff will sort of assist the registrant from that point. But because we realize there's a lot of complexity with the types of ownership changes and such, and so we'd help the registrant navigate those changes in ownership. There are certain changes in ownership, as indicated on our fact sheets and other information on the website, that would affect grandfathering status. But for this registration program, we're just looking to detail that so that we can, move forward with a determination for the registrant. We have a question about when determining a 30-day average. Is it all sources or combined? But really, it's the 30-day average is a per source. We're looking to do the registration on a source-by-source basis, the determination as such. So the 30-day average is going to apply per source.
And then just a note that just because you got the letter doesn't mean you need to register. The list was compiled from our database and from reporting to other agencies. So you sort of have to go through the website and the PowerPoint to determine if it's applicable to you. And it's actually applicable to all facilities you own or operate in the basin, not just necessarily the letter that you got specific to a facility. It's for all facilities you own or operate in the basin.
Yes.
Okay, so we're just reviewing the questions, and we're getting a lot of project-specific related questions. So what we'll look to do is we've been recording all the questions as they've been coming in. So what I think we'll be doing is organizing them by theme, and we'll be looking to enhance our frequently asked questions document on the website. But in addition to that, again, if you have specific project-related questions, I'd encourage you to contact us. We've been on a daily basis, speaking with projects and helping them understand how their particular project or facility fits within the context of the registration program. So that we certainly want to encourage you with your project-specific questions to reach out individually. So with that, the pace of which the questions have been coming in has slowed to the point where we think this is a good point to conclude the webinar. Again, we'll look to respond to the questions we missed on our website or as mentioned, with project-specific, please reach out to us. Thank you.